In Britain's Best, we've selected historic sites in Scotland that we think matter most. Our next site is a castle, this time in the capital city. It dominates the skyline and it tells the story of Scotland's numerous wars with England. It's Edinburgh Castle. If there was one building alone that represented Scottish history, it would have to be Edinburgh Castle. Perched on an extinct volcano overlooking the city, this site has been home to a fortress for almost 1,000 years. But the mighty stronghold on show today is only 500 years old, modern by castle standards, stark evidence of its turbulent history. It still draws over 1 million visitors each year to hear its complex yet compelling story. Over the centuries, attackers have tried to take the castle by force at least 13 times. We asked historian Chris Tabraham to trace the castle's beginnings.
Edinburgh Castle was built in the early part of the 12th century by a King of Scots, David I, who was related to William the Conqueror by marriage, who decided to build himself a great castle here in Edinburgh on this huge volcanic rock, 350 million years old. And it was here for the next 200 years that the castle stood guarding the realm.
Edinburgh Castle has never been taken by direct attack, and you can start to see just how difficult that would have been at this stage in the castle. On top of those walls are the defending army, throwing everything at you from loose rocks to boiling oil and last night's dinner.
But Edinburgh Castle's great claim to fame is its role in the struggle with the English, and one king in particular, Edward I. In his efforts to subdue Scotland, Edinburgh Castle was a perpetual thorn in his side, a defiant image of Scottish independence. So how did Edward finally break down its mighty defences?
Edward crossed the Tweed in 1296 and made a beeline for the Castle Rock here in Edinburgh. He met a strongly armed garrison, but within 3 days his murderous artillery bombardment with his great stone-throwing machines had smashed the garrison defences to pieces. Edward took the castle, and for the next 18 years the English garrison held sway over Scotland from this mighty rock.
But the English garrison didn't count on the Scottish hero, Robert the Bruce. He was distantly related to David I of Scotland, who had built Edinburgh Castle. Believing himself to be the true King of Scotland, he ordered his followers to win back the fortress.
Robert the Bruce decided enough was enough. He wanted this castle back. So he gave Sir Thomas Randolph the task of recapturing the castle. Sir Thomas Randolph agreed, and he said that he could do it with just 30 soldiers.
A hand-picked party of men started to clamber up the Castle Rock. The English, of course, were facing the other way. They weren't expecting an attack from the backside of the castle. So the Scots headed over the battlements, caught the English off guard, slit their throats and tossed their corpses over the battlements and dashed onto pieces on the ground below.
Today, at the front gate of the castle, Robert the Bruce stands guard. But in fact, the man himself never visited Edinburgh Castle. After his troops' famous victory, the Bruce couldn't spare enough men to defend it. So rather than let the English regain control, he destroyed the castle. The Chapel of St Margaret was the only building that was left standing. It wasn't until 150 years later, when Edinburgh emerged as the nation's capital city, that the Scottish King James III began to rebuild the castle. From then on, it became the seat of Scotland's monarchy.
Now above the gate, did you see the Latin inscription? Nemo me impune lacessit. This is Scotland's national motto, and the direct translation is "No one will assail me with impunity." In our language, if you hit me, I will hit you back.
Among other great treasures housed at Edinburgh Castle is one of the world's oldest cannons, nicknamed Mons Meg.
This is my favourite treasure in the whole castle, Mons Meg. This is the leading edge of technology in the 15th century. And she was given as a wedding present, would you believe, to the King of Scots from one of the richest men in Europe, with the intention of it being used against the English. But she's a beauty. I don't know why they named guns after lasses, but this is some lass. She weighs over 6 tons, and she could fire a stone cannonball weighing over 150 kilos, a distance of almost 2 miles.
Edinburgh Castle is still home to a British military garrison. They guard the castle and still fire the traditional 1 o'clock gun. In the days when knowing the exact time was vital to marine navigation, the precise bang of the 1 o'clock gun enabled ships in the harbour to set their timepieces accurately. And despite satellite navigation, the tradition continues today.
Obviously, when you're at sea and you're setting your charts, you need an accurate start time so as you can plot your position. The 105mm gun's a breech loading system invented by a man called Armstrong.
Edinburgh Castle is Scotland's most visited historic site, testament to a remarkable royal fortress and the country's most famous landmark.
For me, Edinburgh Castle isn't just the castle at the heart of the nation's capital. This is the castle at the heart of the nation. It's a living, vibrant part of the story of Scotland.
Edinburgh Castle is one of Britain's best because it's still an enduring national symbol and an icon of the country's capital city. For over 500 years, from David I to James VI, it was an important seat of Scottish royalty, and its 900-year history is the story of Scotland's bloody struggle against the English for independence.